This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
We want to hear from you. A son's desperate plea, a mother's life on the line, and the race against a second deadline. The search is intensifying this morning in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Plus, there's an updated timeline with some brand new details that are emerging about her cameras on her home. We'll talk about what the timeline could tell us about her captors' movements. Also this hour, we've got some chilling new court documents revealing how killer Kohberger possibly attacked Kaylee Goncalves with 2 weapons. And convicted killer Wade Wilson fighting to save his life. His defense team arguing to be heard before the U.S. Supreme Court. Plus, we have obtained some photos of the so-called handsome devil. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you, my friends, and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It's that time of the morning where we get you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. And we got a tremendous show planned for you, so let's get started. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Oh, he has nerve. The man that authorities say was trying to profit from the Guthrie family's tragedy should hang his head in shame. I am so glad he got arrested. And if he's convicted, I hope they lock him up. What defendant Derek Kallela allegedly did is shameful. Federal investigators say that he was trying to demand ransom money from the Guthrie family. The federal complaint says that once agents zeroed in on him as the imposter suspect who sent text messages and made a phone call to the family, they interviewed him, and guess what? He admitted it. Allegedly said that he was following along with the case on television and wanted to see if the Guthrie family would respond to him. That is sick. I wonder how he would feel if he were in the Guthrie family's shoes. It sure wouldn't feel too good if he was the one being preyed upon by some phony baloney looking to exploit his tragedy. Good for the FBI for acting fast. And I sure hope this sends a message to any other imposters who might be looking to profit off of other people's tragedies. It sends the message that you will be prosecuted. That's my opening statement on this Friday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
One of the police officers, they told me, they said, we found Austin. He's in a shed. I said, well, let me go talk to him. And they said, you can't do it. I said, let me go and talk to him. I can get him out the shed. And they refused. They said, we can't let you do that.
All right, in North Carolina, we have got the teen killing spree sentencing for defendant Austin Thompson resuming this morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. In Georgia, we have the trial of the man who allegedly murdered UGA law student Tara Baker. Court gets underway at 9 a.m. We'll go in there live when it does. And in New York, we've got accused assassin Luigi Mangione back in court for a status hearing on his case. Begins 9 a.m. Eastern time. No cameras allowed, but we're going to monitor it for you and bring you any big updates. Right now, we take you to your top story this morning on Opening Statements. Nancy Guthrie still nowhere to be found as the clock is ticking towards another ransom deadline. Nancy Guthrie's son, Camron, is making a fresh plea to his mother's possible captors. In an Instagram post, he urged them to make contact as the first deadline in what authorities describe as an apparent ransom note has now already passed.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
So what does Cameron Guthrie's message mean for this investigation? Will it prompt something? Let's ask our expert investigator guess what they think. Let me welcome in crime scene investigator Cheryl McCollum and retired NYPD detective Rob O'Donnell. Good morning to you both. Cheryl, I'll start with you. Do you think that Cameron's plea that Savannah posted late last night to her Instagram will have any bearing on the situation?
Here's what's key to me. The family made a plea the night before and asked for proof of life. When Camron makes another plea at 5 o'clock at the deadline, that's because they didn't get proof of life. And what is really concerning to me is you've got a man that was just watching this case that figured out a way to text the family. This alleged kidnapper has not done that. He hasn't contacted them personally. Again, I have real doubts about her safety.
Yes, Cheryl, great analysis. Rob, tell me, is it odd to you that these ransom notes that went to TMZ and 2 local stations in Tucson, one of those stations is owned by Court TV's parent company, but I want to be very clear, we at Court TV have not seen that note. It was immediately turned over to law enforcement. Is it odd to you, Rob, that whomever sent these notes would be sending them to media and not to Savannah Guthrie, or if you're going to do media, NBC?
It's not unusual. I mean, people look for whatever resources they think will get the most attention here. The fact that you had the entire children with Savannah Guthrie leading the first message to whoever has their mother, and then today the son, I think, is taking that celebrity. It's purposely taking that celebrity status out of it. You know, here's a real son. Here's a real person, not a celebrity, not someone you see on TV that's pleading for this proof of life and pleading for, you know, the whereabouts of their mother, which takes that. These messages are very coordinated by the experts that are in this field to make certain contacts and make certain to gain certain responses back from whoever may have the mother.
Yes, great points, Rob. Cheryl, back to you. The idea that this was sent to 2 local stations, I want to ask you about that. Does that indicate anything to you? Does it make you think it might have been sent by someone who lives in Tucson?
It makes a lot of sense to me. If this case were about money, if this was about a ransom, you got to contact the family. You've got to, be talking to the person that's got the money. This has not been done here. So again, my concern is if you're more interested in attention than you are money, it has nothing to do with Nancy Guthrie's safety.
Right, Cheryl. You know, I watched Harvey Levin last night on both Anderson Cooper's show on CNN and Sean Hannity's show on Fox, and he did a deep dive on both programs talking about the note that was sent to TMZ, and he said it was very carefully crafted, certainly not something that somebody would spend 5 minutes throwing together, and that the deadlines, one of which was yesterday, 5 p.m., the next one is Monday, he said the way it's written sounds very concerning, especially the Monday deadline, Rob, where it indicates, this is what Harvey said, that something more consequential would happen if this money isn't turned over by way of Bitcoin. And he said at TMZ they verified the Bitcoin address in their letter as being a legitimate Bitcoin address. What do you think about those facts, Rob?
It's everything needs to be looked at by the experts here. The fact that the family themselves have not been contacted, leads to speculation on who this might be to begin with. If it was someone close to the family, if it's someone who knows this family well, they have all these contact information with them, and they're reaching out to TMZ and these media organizations. So because they're reaching out to local media, was it someone that was maybe doing work at the house or someone connected to doing work at the house that doesn't have real knowledge of the family but knows Nancy Guthrie and her possible worth connected to her family there? So the Bitcoin address, steps it up. Is this just, some gardener who was working at the house or somebody who was doing, some chores at the house or a delivery person? When you bring that Bitcoin aspect into it, it brings a little more technological information into it to see what kind of resources they have and what kind of planning went into this. This is not just, hey, drop off $10,000 or $1 million at the mailbox and put it in a McDonald's bag. This is, well thought out and well planned, but the way that the messages went out and the notes went out to local media and such like that, again, with the other Gus brought up, people who were connected to the family or know the family well, the primary goal here in any hostage negotiation when there's ransom is money. They don't want to harm that only leverage they have, which is Nancy Guthrie, unfortunately, in this case. So, where we go from here, these deadlines do mean something. But again, professionally knowing these type of cases and having worked in conjunction with these type of cases, if money's the primary goal, that bodes well for Nancy Guthrie's safety, because they need her to get that money.
Oh, appreciate that point, Rob. Yes, that was something that Harvey Levin said on both programs, that the note indicated that Nancy Guthrie is safe but scared. Cheryl, I want to go to you on something, just kind of taking a step back from the ransom notes and just looking at the other information we know. In particular, the sheriff making a point yesterday during that press conference to say that, I don't know where it came out in the media that there was forced entry. We never confirmed that. We never said that there was any forced entry. I don't know who reported that. And I think that just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, thinking, well, how does some captor get in without forcing their way in? Did that strike you as odd? I would love your insights on that, please, Cheryl.
Well, the first thing, even I pointed out, they show the front door. Brian Inton went right to the front door. There appears to be no forced entry. The door is not bent. You don't see pry marks. You don't see scratches. You don't see the door frame damaged in any way. So if you're talking about forced entry, she already has a secondary door. There's not one door, there's two. I don't see any damage to either door. The blood is the most concerning thing to me. You've got droplets there and you've got a spray. That spray and the pattern of those droplets looks to me like somebody was standing still while bleeding. So, that's on the outside of the house. They've already said there's blood on the inside of the house. To me, that indicates somebody that is injured and is being moved. She's being moved out toward a vehicle. If you're a stranger, why are you harming an 84-year-old woman? It doesn't take that to control her, Julie. So I'm concerned she's bleeding. I'm concerned there's been no direct contact. I'm concerned there's been no proof of life. Look, all you've got to do is say, Nancy, what was your childhood nickname? And then tell the children, this is her nickname when she was 5 years old. They would know that. That's not something out that somebody can Google. Ask her what bones she broke first. Anything only she would know. Nancy could easily tell them, since her cell phone is left behind, maybe she doesn't know, phone numbers. She knows the church. She could say, call my preacher. He will get a message to my children, and they will give you a burner phone number. These things are real easy. They're not being done by these so-called kidnappers who now, again, have moved the goalposts to Monday, which in my experience is very unusual.
Right. Boy, Cheryl, thanks for sharing all of that. It raises a valid question, a very sad and upsetting question. But Rob, I want to go to you on this. You worked homicide for many, many, many years in your years of service with the NYPD. Do you think we have a homicide case here?
Unfortunately, that needs to be looked at very greatly here. The amount of time from when the doorbell ring camera was removed, motion detection that they don't have video for, and the time that her pacemaker stopped talking with her smartwatch. You're talking about 45 minutes this person was in the house. What was being done there? The amount of blood that's outside. I also have a big problem with the crime scene here, that it was released to the family and then they went back days later, recorded it off and researched it. Listen, she's still missing. This is still a crime scene. And I get the fact everyone's a person of interest, including her children, and you have to work from the inside out in these cases. All right, where were the children? Can we clear all them? Can we clear the people connected to them? Do they have anything to do with this? All right, let's talk about anybody who was in the house, workers, people who did work at the house, which we know now was very common for her because she was an older woman who got help around the house. Work outside from them, and then you work with strangers. Because of the rural nature of this area, Tucson, Arizona, where it's really suburban and desert-like terrain, At 2 o'clock in the morning, there probably wasn't a lot of traffic. So external traffic cameras from miles away could show something here, especially for the fact that time frame. You know, who else is driving around this area at 2 o'clock in the morning? So you can narrow it down, and this takes time, but they do have the resources there now. The blood splatter both outside and inside the house, and the fact that media could walk right up and show those blood spatters, I have a big problem with that as a crime scene investigator and a homicide detective myself.
Yes, you know, I'm so glad you said that, Rob. I was saying yesterday, why wasn't that cleaned up before the scene was released? I'm glad to hear you say that. And Cheryl, you nodded. Last word, Cheryl. You too have an issue with that.
I have an issue that it was released as quick as it was. And again, when law enforcement is done, they don't clean up the scene. They just leave. And it shows me that the family also didn't call somebody back there to take care of that. I mean, it just wasn't done the way that I would have liked to see the scene be cared for at all.
And there are companies that law enforcement can recommend, you know, who do crime scene cleanup, you know, so certainly you would think that communication would be made in an ideal scenario. This is an awful, awful situation. Our hearts break for the Guthrie family. We're sending our love and prayers from Court TV, as Savannah is a Court TV alum. Cheryl McCollum, Rob O'Donnell, thank you so much. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, our coverage continues. We're diving into the timeline, the brand new clues, and what they could tell us about who may have taken Nancy Guthrie. Plus,
she was stabbed over 30 plus times, and she was struck, and there was quite a bit of damage to her face.
New details in the brutal murders of the Idaho 4. Killer Kohberger allegedly using not one, but 2 weapons to murder Kaylee Goncalves.
Tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Here on the ground in Tucson, there have been thousands of leads.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy.
Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV and Scripps News special report tonight at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Every reference Nancy, a white female, 84 years of age, 5'2" medium build, Idaho blue, fleeing after 2,200 hours as of yesterday. Nancy has high blood pressure, pacemaker, and cardiac issues.
That dispatch call was what sparked the search for Nancy Guthrie. Investigators now revealing new timeline details relating to her late-night disappearance. The 84-year-old taken against her will over the weekend. Last seen alive on Saturday night, reported missing on Sunday, not showing up for church Sunday morning. On Thursday, the sheriff laid out an updated timeline up to the moment that Nancy was reported missing.
5:32 p.m., Nancy travels to her local family's home for dinner and playing games with the family, just visiting. At 9:48 p.m., which is very consistent to what we were told by the family, that Nancy was dropped off at home, and we know that because we have a garage door open at approximately, I can't stress that enough, at approximately 9:48 p.m. At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes, which is that time we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed. Sunday morning, early morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12 a.m., software detects a person on a camera, but there's no video available. 2:28, Nancy's pacemaker app shows that it was a disconnect from the phone. And at 11:56 a.m., the family checks on Nancy and discovers her missing. And at 12:03 p.m., 911 is called in to the Pima County Sheriff's Department.
Some key points in the timeline, so let's zero in on this. 1:47 a.m., that's when the doorbell camera disconnects. At 2:12, There's a person detected, but no video of that person because of the software. 2:28, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker disconnects from her phone. So what does the timing tell us about the criminal behavior? Let's bring in criminology expert, author, and professor, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Dr. Debbie, your thoughts on the times that we're working with here, please.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning. Believe it or not, if we may, I'd like to go back to even an earlier time frame. I have not heard this discussed, Julie, and I would like to discuss it with you and the courties, and that is, although Mrs. Guthrie was abducted on January 31st, her birthday, Julie, you know, I always look at dates as it relates to these cases. Mrs. Guthrie's 84th birthday is January 27th. So we're talking about a 4-day window between her birthday and date of abduction. And I think that's very important, Julie, because it matters. It mattered to whoever took her. And then certainly, of course, when we're talking about the middle of the night, reminiscent of a Bryan Kohberger, when these individuals decide to victimize their targets, and they do so in this time frame, of course, it would suggest the heightened level of vulnerability. One is sleeping, one is scared, frazzled, can't particularly fight back. But I do think this 4-day window between her birthday and date of abduction means something to this captor.
Right, Dr. Debbie. Okay, so you think there's significance in the birthday. How about the minutes ticking? So 1:47 a.m., we know the camera's gone. And then 2:12 a.m., somebody's back in front of that camera, but we can't see the person, unfortunately, because of what happened, just the motion detected. What do you think about that amount of time, 1:47 to 2:12, to potentially be going in the house, finding Nancy, and moving Nancy?
Right, very significant, Julie. Again, it speaks to the individual's knowledge of what he, potentially she, would be doing in terms of what the 3 most important considerations are to a captor. Of course, the coercion, forcing the individual against one's will, holding them captive, and then, of course, the confinement. You see, these are elements that are much different than other cases we discuss on your program. And at least, you know, I'd like to offer some glimmer of hope here, which is, I do think Mrs. Guthrie is alive, and I do think there is importance to the selection of the media outlets that this individual reached out to. TMZ would suggest to me the person is knowledgeable and perhaps favorable toward that media outlet, maybe as a subscriber, a follower, keeps up with celebrity news. And then also, very importantly, the local affiliate KOLD, both of which are alleged to have received these ransom notes. So I think that the individual is still in Tucson, Arizona, and that Mrs. Guthrie is alive and most likely in the residence. And I hope we can add her to the list, Julie, of others who've been held captive but have been safe and returned, to include Elizabeth Smart, Amanda Berry, and Jamie Klaus.
Yeah, I hope so too, Dr. Debbie, definitely. So, and let's dig in more on those notes, because there's another one sent to KGUN, K-Gun TV station in Tucson, which is, it's a Scripps affiliate station. So the EW Scripps company owns Court TV Network, and they own lots of local stations around the country. And one of them is in that Tucson market. And so digging in, there are at least 3 of these purported notes, we'll call them 3, that are floating out there. We know that one of the letters, and I was referencing it earlier on the program, Harvey Levin was talking about, was sent to TMZ and saying that this letter includes 2 deadlines, one that already passed yesterday, and then one that's upcoming on Monday that's a more consequential deadline. We heard in the press conference earlier yesterday the FBI acknowledging this. Let's take a listen.
We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, We are taking it seriously. We are in communication with the family. And while we advise and recommend from a law enforcement perspective, any action taken on any ransom is ultimately decided by the family.
Okay, Dr. Debbie, I'd love to know your thoughts on these purported ransom notes.
Sure. Well, of course, shame on whoever's participating in any type of hoax. That's just despicable. But I do maintain, I think, and, again, it's up to the law enforcement experts, local, state, and federal, to really look at content and verbiage within the framework of these letters, but they must be taken seriously. And therefore, I think that some of the language also that the family members use, now you have the siblings on the screen, but what really struck me as very important language used: we're ready to listen to you. Remember, Julie, whoever this individual is, likely somebody out of control, personally and professionally, doesn't feel, high up in the hierarchical levels of life. And therefore, to use that language would suggest, okay, Mr. Individual or Ms., we're giving you the opportunity to be in control. But I also think, Julie, what's important to this person, yes, potentially money, but also potentially the media grab, again, because we're talking about the national platform of the TMZ network, but also these two locals. I really think the person follows media, likes the idea that the media is running the story, and most likely feels very much in control because it is the lead story.
Boy, excellent insight. Certainly something to think about as we move forward. Dr. Debbie Goodman, always great to have you on this program. Thank you so much. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, we're going to turn to the brutal murders of the Idaho Four. Even more violent than we first knew. Prosecutors now saying a second weapon was used. And
we, the jury, find by a vote of 9-3 that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death.
Oh my, remember him? Wade Wilson. Well, he's appealing his death sentence. Plus, we got some brand new photos that we had never seen before. Maybe you haven't either. Just wait till you check out these pictures of the so-called handsome devil. Welcome back. This morning, we're giving a voice to Bryan Kohberger's victims as we examine new findings that killer Kohberger likely used 2 weapons on one of his victims. In a newly unsealed court document, a forensic criminologist is quoted as saying that Kaylee Goncalves might have been attacked by 2 different people because her injuries had suggested 2 different weapons were used. But a second suspect never emerged in the investigation, as we know. Kaylee's sister even talked about 2 weapons being used at Kohberger's sentencing.
Instead, I will call you what you are: sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words?
It's so heartbreaking just hearing from her sister there and going back to that very, I think, vivid day for all of us, the day that all of those victims got to address this monster. So let's talk about how these findings are determined at autopsy, how it was apparent that Kaylee might have been stabbed with more than one knife. Let's bring in forensic pathologist, Dr. Priya Banerjee. Dr. Priya, good morning to you. Tell me, when you're at autopsy, how does it become apparent that there might be two different weapons? Let's say if we're talking about stab wounds.
Sure. Good morning. So what we're looking at are features of the wounds, and you really want to look at the width, the depth of the wounds. So if something goes deeper than the other track, maybe we usually probe them. So these are features not only on the skin, but how far into the body. And then we look at changes around the skin, around the stab wounds to see if there's any features of the weapon. So if it's jabbed completely in, is there what's called a hilt, like a stopper that might leave a mark on the skin? Are there sawtooth edges called serrations? Oftentimes we know that from like a kitchen knife. Some have a smooth edge and some have a sharp, like a sawed edge. Now you can have a single or double-edged knife features as well. So we really go into a lot of detail about each wound, and you never exclude that more than one weapon, couldn't be used. And really that's where DNA will come in too, that they will test any candidate weapon for DNA, because the skin can sort of mold around the weapon. So it's not like a carbon copy, if you will, into the body or on the skin. So we give features and then we try to match it both with physical characteristics and DNA.
Oh boy, this is helpful, Dr. Priya. So if it's not a knife, and I want to be clear, we don't know what the second was. We definitely know one knife was used, one huge knife. The second weapon, it's not being made public. If it's not a knife, something else, does that become easier for you to see that two different weapons were involved?
Well, if just to clarify, if we're talking about, let's say, blunt force injuries,
right,
so
which she did have
mechanism,
to her head. Yes.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
That means she was beaten. So those would appear very differently on the body. So yes, we would see not only stab wounds, but if we see bruising, crushing of tissue, skull fractures, injuries to the brain or other parts of the body, that would look very different. So we'd have bruising, abrasions, which are scrapes, even crushing of tissue, and maybe bone fractures, a lot of bruising within the tissues. So blunt force injuries are crushing injuries, which is stab wounds or slicing wounds or cutting with a sharp weapon. So those would appear very different.
I can't imagine the sight that was left behind, this beautiful young girl. I mean, all of those victims, all beautiful, but I know we're focusing really on Kaylee and what was done to her, because this was different. The other victims were only stabbed, we know that, but this was just so brutal. Dr. Priya, any thoughts on what that might indicate to you, based on your past experience, dealing with killers? What does that say to you?
I mean, both stabbing and beatings are very up close and personal, but what makes me think is a lot of anger and a lot of disfigurement. Why it was, directed towards Kaylee is very perplexing to me, because it was an isolated pattern, if you will, right? It's only seen in her, whereas the stab wounds went into the other victims as well. So I don't know if she tried to fight back more and that angered him, or he had a sort of predetermined anger towards her. If I'm not mistaken, she also had was it her with the dog?
Yes, you're correct. Yes.
Yes. So I don't know if the dog got in the way, like trying to defend her. I mean, there's so many possibilities, and this is sort of speculation. But what it does mean to me is there was a lot more violence, and it's physically very tiring if you think about it, to strike someone so many times. So that also, is important when you think about just how much violence was directed towards her. And I'm sorry to even, speak of this, because I feel like the families are just perpetually, have to face this. And and it's so hard to talk about someone's loved one, but it's so extremely violent.
No, it really is. And I know the families want answers. That's really what they've been yearning for, is answers to this, and want to know what happened. And that monster certainly hasn't provided any answers, as you know. Dr. Priya, thank you for giving us these answers about things you look at with autopsies. We really appreciate it. We'll see you soon. And as we go to break, we want to remember those 4 innocent, beautiful victims: Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. They had their whole lives ahead of them. Bright, young, vibrant, good people. They should be here today. We want their families to know that we're thinking about them always here at Court TV. We'll be right back.
Tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Here on the ground in Tucson, there have been thousands of leads.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy.
Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV and Scripps News special report tonight at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. We're getting a glimpse of convicted killer Wade Wilson behind bars, and it is not pretty. We got these photos for you. YouTuber Melissa Jade reportedly obtained them through a Freedom of Information Act request to the Lee County Jail. The pictures were taken back in 2023 before Wade Wilson went to trial. You might remember his trial on Court TV. So apparently when he would turn his tablet on in the jail, the tablet would automatically take a picture of him. So there are lots of them. These photos show a very different looking Wade Wilson with some missing teeth as well. One photo, he's got a bandage on his head. Don't know what happened there. Apparently he cleaned up for trial, lost some weight, and was ready to go before the jury. You remember this trial, I'm sure. He was convicted of the murders of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz and sentenced to death for those crimes. Well, now his attorney is fighting to save his life, vowing to take his case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if he has to. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about his appeal and those photos that might be unappealing. Let's bring in the former state attorney in Palm Beach County, Florida. He's in private practice now, our friend Dave Ehrenberg. Dave, good morning to you. Let's start with the appeal, and then we'll move to the pictures. So as I understand it, Dave, because these murders happened in 2019, his conviction in 2023, and the law changed in Florida where you are with respect to the unanimity with a death penalty recommendation from a jury, it seems that his counsel is trying to capitalize on that and saying, wait a minute, when he did the murders, it had to be a unanimous verdict from the jury. And state of Florida, you retroactively applied this new law, and it can't stand. Dave, first of all, do I have that right? And who's right here? Is this attorney right?
Julie, good to be back with you. Well, the Florida Supreme Court has already rejected this, so it's going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. But in 1977, the Supreme Court ruled that changes to Florida, back in Florida, it's always a Florida connection, changes to Florida's death penalty procedures were not unconstitutionally retroactive. And they said that because they did not change the substantive law. So I think that is probably going to be what happens here. I think the Supreme Court will probably deny cert, meaning they won't even take the case. This is a very conservative Supreme Court. This is a monster on death row. I don't think they're going to go out of their way to save this guy.
Yeah, I sure hope not, Dave. You know, why should he benefit for that? You know, now the law in Florida says you need to have a minimum of 8 jurors recommending death. There could be 4 who do not recommend death, and that's enough. That's all you need. And in his case, with respect to Christine Melton's murder, the jury voted 9-3 recommending death. And with respect to Diane Ruiz's murder, they voted 10-2. And the judge followed the recommendation, recommended death for both murders. I understand his counsel has to make these arguments, but you seem pretty confident, David, they're going to fail.
I think they're likely to fail. He's an excellent appellate lawyer, one of the best, and he's making the argument that I always anticipated would be made, in that Florida now has the lowest burden for prosecutors. It's only 8-4. You can execute someone with an 8-4 jury ruling, although you need unanimity for at least one of the statutory aggravators, like it's cold calculated, premeditated, that kind of stuff. So I do think it goes to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court denies cert, but keep in mind, this is all about a procedural change, not a substantive one. And that's why I don't think the retroactivity is going to work. And that's why I don't think the 8-4 versus unanimity is going to work. And that's why I think his destiny is to be executed in Florida.
Yes. And I think we all here remember why the law was changed, right? With Nicholas Cruz's case. Dave, I'm sure you agree. I can't remember such a miscarriage of justice. That was, I'll never forget, like my jaw hitting the floor when that jury came back that way. And so the lawmakers acted quickly, did they not, to change the procedure, as you said?
They did. You had Nicholas Cruz, who, I'm sorry I even mention his name. I hate mentioning that mass murderer's name. He's the one from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas mass shooting on Valentine's Day, where 17 innocents, most of them children, were slaughtered. And we thought he would get a quick verdict of death, but he got 9-3, I believe, to save his life. They made him look like an infant with his sweater and big oversized glasses, when this kid was like a Nazi child, and yet and not even a child anymore. He was an adult under the law. So in response, the Florida legislature reduced it from unanimous to 8-4. That's the impact that case made.
Yeah, bravo to your state lawmakers, Dave. I thought it was fantastic that they acted, and that this is, you know, what happens when we you know this, Dave, you have the death penalty reserved for the worst of the worst human beings in our society, and that's what you get. You get that punishment when you take other people's lives in such cruel, heinous ways, like Nicholas Cruz did, and this Wade Wilson did. I can't even look at him. I find him frightening and repulsive. But Dave, he's got a fan club. Paramount Plus did a great documentary, which you are in, by the way, as I understand it. You know what's crazy, Dave? I watched 2 episodes to prepare for the segment a couple weeks ago, and I could not look at this guy. I couldn't watch the 3rd episode, and then I heard Dave Ehrenberg's in the 3rd episode. You got to watch it. So I got to go back and see you, my friend. These photos, want to get your thoughts on them in his fan club. These are the pictures from 2023. Melissa Jade obtained, a YouTuber. Dave, your thoughts, my friend?
Well, thank you for watching till the end. That's where I am. They put me in the last episode, so check it out. It's a really good show. Handsome Devil, it's called. Now, as far as his pictures, you know, I don't think it looks so scary anymore. I remember he went from being a villain in comic books, like he went from being Deadpool to Dad Bod. You know, I mean, it looks like not so scary when it doesn't look like a villain and instead looks like the guy who complains about the HOA's mulch policy. So maybe his fans out there are no longer think he's so appealing and scary in a handsome way. This guy's evil. He's a monster, and he's clearly got serious mental issues. I mean, I think part of the reason why he's blown up so much, he probably is on some antipsychotropic drugs, and maybe that's increased his weight, because I don't think that there's a buffet in that prison cell.
Yeah, no, he's not eating good there. Then again, maybe he's eating too many carbs, like Donna. Remember her saying not enough protein, too many carbs? Maybe he's on her diet. Who knows? But again, on Paramount Plus, excellent documentary, Handsome Devil, Charming Killer. And Dave, only because of you. You were the only reason I'm going to watch that 3rd episode, because we want to see you. And I know your insight was excellent. That's what everybody's saying. So thank you so much for the insights this morning, Dave. Always a pleasure. We got to let you go. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon. And friends at home, we got to hit a break. But first, want to say thank you for watching Opening Statements this morning. Watch it again. Share it with your friends. Go to courttv.com. Hit that Shows tab.